The Japanese counterattack asterisk. Japanese aircraft counterattack. But the damage is controlled. Yorktown doesn't sink immediately. The Japanese attacks don't destroy American carriers. The outcome asterisk. By day's end, the Japanese carriers are sunk. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu. All 4 carriers go down. American loses 1 carrier, Yorktown. Japan loses the battle, loses the strategic initiative. The consequence asterisk. The loss of 4 carriers cripples Japan. Japan can't replace the carriers. Can't replace the crews. American carriers can be rebuilt. American crews can be replaced. The balance of naval power shifts to America. The historical significance asterisk. Midway is the turning point of the Pacific War. Before Midway, Japan is advancing, America is retreating. The war's trajectory changes in a single day. Japan's plan for Midway was sophisticated, detailed, aimed at luring the American carriers into a trap. But the plan had critical flaws. Flaws that would determine the outcome. The overconfidence problem asterisk. Japan believed the American carriers were damaged beyond repair. 2 carriers had been sunk, Lexington and Coral Sea damaged. Japan believed Yorktown was sunk or crippled beyond repair. Japan believed only 2 American carriers remained. The assessment was wrong. Yorktown was repaired in 48 hours. The code break advantage asterisk. America broke the Japanese code. American intelligence knew. The Japanese plan. The Japanese carrier positions. The Japanese attack timing. The Japanese objective. Japan believed the plan was secret. It wasn't. The American commander positioned his carriers based on intercepted intelligence. The garrison was small, not strong. But the garrison bought time, delayed Japanese operations. The delay allowed American carriers to position for ambush. The Japanese fleet composition asterisk. Japan sent 4 fleet carriers, 2 battleships, 3 cruisers, multiple destroyers, troop transports for invasion of Midway. It was a massive force, confident. But the troop transports slowed the fleet, made it less maneuverable. The Japanese assumption asterisk. Japan assumed Midway garrison would be quickly overwhelmed. Invasion would proceed. American carriers, if present, would attack to stop invasion. Japanese fighters would defeat American fighters. Japanese carriers would then destroy American carriers. The assumption chain depended on each step succeeding. One failure, and the plan collapsed. The American response asterisk. America committed 3 carriers. America's carriers positioned northwest of Midway, hidden, waiting to ambush the Japanese carriers. American fighters would be low, protecting the carriers. American bombers would attack the Japanese carriers. The first Japanese attack. Japanese carriers launched aircraft to attack Midway Island. The aircraft attacked the island, caused damage, but didn't destroy it completely. The attack lasted about 30 minutes. Then the Japanese aircraft returned to their carriers. The critical moment. As the Japanese aircraft landed on their carriers, American aircraft attacked. The Japanese carriers were vulnerable, aircraft still landing, fuel and ordnance being loaded. The American attack was devastating. The Japanese vulnerability. Japanese carriers had a design flawed, NO armored flight decks. Armor was applied to other parts of the ship, not the flight deck. A hit on the flight deck could start devastating fires. American bombs hit the flight decks. The Japanese carriers caught fire. The fire spreading. The fires spread rapidly. Japanese damage control couldn't contain them. The fires reached the magazines, ammunition storage. The magazines exploded. The carriers were doomed. Akagi sank first. Scuttled to prevent capture, Kaga sank. Massive explosions, Soryu sank. Internal explosions, Hiryu was attacked later. Also sank. All 4 Japanese fleet carriers were lost. Japanese commanders couldn't believe what was happening. For carriers, lost in hours. It was impossible, yet it was happening. The shock was profound. American carriers suffered damage. Yorktown was hit. The ship was saved initially, continued fighting. Later in the day, Japanese aircraft attacked again. Damaged Yorktown further. Despite damage, Yorktown continued operations. Aircraft landed, refueled. Japan lost 4 carriers, irreplaceable. America lost 1 carrier, replaceable. The exchange rate was catastrophic for Japan. The Japanese lost faith in their strategic plan. The plan assumed Japanese superiority, assumed easy victory. Instead, Japan was defeated, devastated. The psychological impact on Japanese military was profound. The surface battle continued briefly. Japanese and American cruisers and destroyers engaged. But the carrier battle had already been decided. Midway Island remained in American hands. The Japanese invasion was canceled. June 1942. The Pacific Ocean. Japan has conquered vast territories, controls the Western Pacific, seems invincible. But America is preparing to fight back. Two carrier fleets are on a collision course. Japanese and American. The Japanese fleet is larger, more experienced, confident. The American fleet is smaller, less experienced, desperate. On June 4, 1942, they collide at Midway Atoll. In a single day, the course of the Pacific War is determined. The setup asterisk. Japan's strategy: consolidate control of the Pacific. Destroy the American Pacific Fleet. Japan's plan: attack Midway Island. Lure the American carriers into battle. The American carriers would be destroyed. The Pacific Fleet would be crippled. Japan would control the Pacific indefinitely. The Japanese confidence. Japanese commanders are confident, overconfident. Japan has defeated every opponent so far, has never lost a major battle. The American Navy seems inferior, incompletely rebuilt. One more victory, and Japan dominates the Pacific for years. The American desperation. America has lost battles, losing the war in the Pacific. The Pacific Fleet is undermanned, under-equipped. But America is determined to fight, to resist. The Midway battle is America's chance. Last chance to stop Japanese expansion. The carrier battle. The battle centers on carriers, not battleships. Battleships are obsolete in this war. Carriers are the dominant weapon. The carriers themselves don't see each other. Fight from beyond visual range. The Battle of Midway seems like an American victory. But the victory hung on threads, thin threads. Small changes would have meant defeat, not victory. The intelligence thread asterisk. If America hadn't broken the Japanese code, America wouldn't have known where the Japanese fleet was. America wouldn't have positioned carriers for ambush. Japan would have achieved surprise. Japan would have likely won the battle. The code break was the foundation of victory. The timing thread asterisk. The Japanese carriers launched their first attack on Midway. If the attack had been more successful, Midway would have been destroyed. Japanese invasion could have proceeded. American carriers would have attacked to stop the invasion. Japan would have fought a battle on its terms. The partial failure of the first attack was crucial. The aircraft availability thread asterisk. If Japanese aircraft had more fuel, they could have remained longer on patrol, could have detected American carriers earlier, could have attacked first. The fuel limitation meant Japanese aircraft were focused on specific areas. The damage control thread asterisk. American damage control saved Yorktown temporarily. If Yorktown had sunk immediately, America would have lost a carrier. The available American aircraft would have been reduced. The battle might have gone differently. American damage control expertise proved crucial. The pilot training thread asterisk. American pilots were less experienced than Japanese, but American pilot training emphasized recovery of downed pilots, damage control procedures, emergency procedures. Japanese pilot training emphasized combat skills, but not recovery. The maintenance quality thread asterisk. American aircraft were well maintained. American mechanics kept aircraft in fighting condition. Japanese aircraft were also well maintained initially. But as the war continued, Japanese maintenance suffered spare parts shortages. At Midway, both sides' aircraft were in reasonable condition. Asterisk asterisk. The distance thread asterisk asterisk. The battle was fought at a distance that favored American carriers. American carriers had aircraft with sufficient range. If the battle had been fought closer, Japanese aircraft might have had advantage. But the distance meant Japanese fighters had limited endurance. The weather thread. Weather affected visibility and aircraft operations. If weather had been different, aircraft operations would have been different. Attack timing would have been different. The outcome might have been different. The weather happened to favor the eventual victor. The luck thread. Luck played a role, significant role. American torpedo bombers attacked at the exact moment. Japanese fighters were low, attacking Midway. Japanese carriers were vulnerable. Japanese anti-aircraft defenses were distracted. Different timing and the attack might have failed. The Japanese preparation thread. Japan prepared extensively for Midway, but Japan focused on defeating the American carrier if it appeared. Japan didn't prepare for multiple American carriers appearing together. The assumption was only 2 American carriers maximum. When 3 appeared, the Japanese plan was suddenly inadequate. The American desperation thread. America, losing the war, committed everything to Midway. All available carriers, all available aircraft. American commanders took risks, made aggressive decisions. A less desperate military might have been more cautious. Might have lost the Japanese competence thread. Japanese commanders were competent, not incompetent. The plan was sound in theory. The problem was the plan depended on assumptions that proved false. Competent commanders can make good plans that fail due to false assumptions. The integration thread. American commanders integrated intelligence information effectively. The code break was translated into tactical positioning. Japanese commanders didn't have this advantage. The integration advantage proved decisive. The first strike thread. In carrier battles, the first effective strike often decides the outcome. If Japan had achieved it, American carriers might have been crippled. Japan might have won. The first strike determined the outcome, the counterfactual. If any one of these threads had broken differently, the battle might have gone to Japan. Japan might have dominated the Pacific for years. The war might have lasted much longer. American casualties might have been higher. The victory was narrower than it appeared. The fragility assessment. The Battle of Midway is history's lesson in how fragile victory can be. Victory depended on intelligence, timing, luck, leadership, training, preparation, geography, assumptions, all aligned. One failure, and the outcome is different. The Battle of Midway is often told as an American victory story. More fragile, more dependent on chance. The intelligence victory asterisk. The American intelligence success was remarkable. Breaking the Japanese code wasn't easy, took months of work. The code breakers, primarily at Station Hypo in Hawaii, decrypted Japanese messages. They identified the target as AF, believed to be Midway. They confirmed by sending a fake message. Midway is low on fresh water. The Japanese intercepted it. Sent a message about AF being low on water. Confirmation, the target was Midway. The positioning decision asterisk. Admiral Chester Nimitz, commander of the Pacific Fleet, made the decision. Based on intelligence, he positioned American carriers northwest of Midway. The position was based on where intelligence said the Japanese fleet would be. If the intelligence was wrong, the American carriers would be useless. But the intelligence was correct. The positioning was perfect. The surprise reversal asterisk. Japan planned to surprise America. Instead, America surprised Japan. The surprise was reversed because of intelligence. The Japanese confidence blind asterisk. Japanese commanders believed. American carriers weren't operational wrong. Only 2 American carriers were available wrong. Yorktown was sunk wrong. American pilots were inferior, partially true, but not decisive. All assessments were flawed. Flawed assessments led to flawed strategy. The first attack launch asterisk. Japanese carriers launched their first attack on Midway Island. The attack force consisted of 108 aircraft, dive bombers, torpedo bombers, and fighters. The attack was coordinated, professional, effective, but it wasn't completely successful. The Midway defense asterisk. American Marines on Midway defended. They had aircraft, some obsolete. They had anti-aircraft guns. They fought desperately. The attack damaged Midway, but didn't destroy it completely. The runway remained operational. Asterisk asterisk the critical decision asterisk asterisk. The Japanese commander of the carrier force had to decide. Send a second attack on Midway to finish the job, or recover the first wave of aircraft and prepare to defend against American carriers. The decision was made. Send a second attack. Bomb Midway again. The moment of vulnerability. As the Japanese prepared the second attack, they had to rearm aircraft. Aircraft were being taken off the carriers. New ordnance was being loaded. The carriers were in chaos, full of aircraft. Fuel was being loaded. Ammunition was being staged. The carriers were at maximum vulnerability. The American attack timing. At this exact moment, American aircraft attacked. The timing was almost too perfect, too lucky. Japanese fighters were low, attacking Midway. Japanese anti-aircraft defenses were distracted, tracking Midway-based American aircraft. The Japanese carriers were defenseless. The torpedo bombers. American torpedo bombers attacked first. They came in low, slow. Easy targets. Japanese fighters shot many down, but enough got through to launch torpedoes. The torpedoes were launched. They came from altitude, steep dives. The Japanese anti-aircraft defenses were disrupted by the torpedo attack. The dive bombers found targets easily. Bombs were dropped, direct hits achieved. The fires. The bombs started fires on the Japanese carriers. The fires were fed by fuel, by ordnance, by the wood and canvas of the aircraft. The fires spread rapidly. Japanese damage control teams fought the fires. But the fires were overwhelming. The magazine explosions. The fires reached the magazines where ammunition was stored. The magazines exploded violently. The explosions ripped the ships apart. Akagi was engulfed in flames. Kaga was torn apart by explosions. Soryu was consumed by fire. Hiryu would be attacked and sunk later. The point of no return. Once the first 3 carriers caught fire and exploded, the battle was decided. Japan had lost the naval battle. Japan had lost the strategic battle. Japan would lose the war. The turning point was when the fires started, when the explosions happened. The disbelief. Japanese commanders watching the carriers burn couldn't believe it. For carriers, the pride of the Japanese Navy. Gone, destroyed. Irreplaceable. The shock was profound. The continued fighting. The battle continued through the day. Japanese forces attacked American carriers. Yorktown was hit again. Too damaged to continue. But the carrier battle had been decided. America had won. The loss exchange. America lost 1 carrier, Yorktown. Japan lost 4 carriers. The exchange was catastrophic for Japan. Japan couldn't replace the carriers. Japan couldn't replace the crews. Japan couldn't replace the pilot experience. The realization. As the day progressed, it became clear. Japan was losing, had lost. The offensive that was supposed to extend Japanese dominance had instead crippled Japan. The momentum had reversed. America was taking the initiative. The major fighting had ceased. The outcome was clear. America had won. The strategic consequence. From Midway forward, America was on the offensive. Japan was on the defensive. The Pacific War's trajectory was clear. American victory was becoming inevitable. The battle didn't end the war, but it determined the war's outcome. The Battle of Midway determined the Pacific War's trajectory, but it also reveals deeper truths about warfare. The role of chance asterisk. Chance played a huge role. The American attack came at the exact moment the Japanese were most vulnerable. If the attack had come 15 minutes earlier, the Japanese fighters would have been above the carriers. The attack would have failed. If the attack had come 15 minutes later, the Japanese would have recovered their aircraft. The carriers would have been ready to defend. 15 minutes. The margin between victory and defeat. The intelligence advantage asterisk. Intelligence determined the positioning. Correct intelligence led to correct positioning. Correct positioning led to the ambush. The ambush led to victory. Without intelligence, there's no victory. The pilot's sacrifice asterisk. American pilots died in the battle. Torpedo bomber pilots died. Most of the first wave was shot down. But their sacrifice achieved the victory. They distracted the Japanese, made them vulnerable. The later dive bombers succeeded because the torpedo bombers had attacked first. The leadership difference asterisk. American commanders used intelligence effectively, made aggressive decisions, positioned forces correctly, took calculated risks. Japanese commanders failed to anticipate American strength, made defensive decisions, positioned forces conventionally, made strategic errors. The second attack decision. The leadership difference was decisive. The training difference asterisk. American training emphasized recovery of pilots, damage control, improvisation. Japanese training emphasized combat skills, aggressive tactics, individual excellence. The American training paid off in the long run, recovering pilots, saving ships. The Japanese training won individual fights, but lost the war. The production difference asterisk. After Midway, Japan couldn't replace 4 fleet carriers. The shipyards were already at capacity. America built Essex-class carriers, built dozens of them. The psychological impact asterisk. Japanese pilots lost confidence. Japanese commanders lost confidence. Japanese morale declined. American pilots gained confidence. American commanders gained confidence. American morale improved. The psychological shift was as important as the military shift. The strategic error analysis asterisk. The Japanese made strategic errors. 1. Underestimated American carriers, assumed only two. 2. Divided the fleet, some ships weren't in the main battle. 3. Made the second attack decision, left carriers vulnerable. 4. Didn't prepare for American carriers to be present. Each error independently could have been overcome. Together, they were catastrophic. The Battle of Midway determined the Pacific War's trajectory, but it also reveals deeper truths about warfare. The role of chance asterisk. Chance played a huge role. The American attack came at the exact moment the Japanese were most vulnerable. If the attack had come 15 minutes earlier, the Japanese fighters would have been above the carriers. The attack would have failed. If the attack had come 15 minutes later, the Japanese would have recovered their aircraft. The carriers would have been ready to defend. 15 minutes. The margin between victory and defeat. The intelligence advantage asterisk. Intelligence determined the positioning. Correct intelligence led to correct positioning. Correct positioning led to the ambush. The ambush led to victory. Without intelligence, there's no victory. The pilot's sacrifice asterisk. American pilots died in the battle. Torpedo bomber pilots died. Most of the first wave was shot down. But their sacrifice achieved the victory. They distracted the Japanese, made them vulnerable. The later dive bombers succeeded because the torpedo bombers had attacked first. The leadership difference asterisk. American commanders used intelligence effectively, made aggressive decisions, positioned forces correctly, took calculated risks. Japanese commanders failed to anticipate American strength, made defensive decisions, positioned forces conventionally, made strategic errors, the second attack decision. The leadership difference was decisive. The training difference asterisk. American training emphasized recovery of pilots, damage control, improvisation. Japanese training emphasized combat skills, aggressive tactics, individual excellence. The American training paid off in the long run, recovering pilots, saving ships. The Japanese training won individual fights, but lost the war. The production difference asterisk. After Midway, Japan couldn't replace 4 fleet carriers. The shipyards were already at capacity. America built Essex-class carriers, built dozens of them. The psychological impact asterisk. Japanese pilots lost confidence. Japanese commanders lost confidence. Japanese morale declined. American pilots gained confidence. American commanders gained confidence. American morale improved. The psychological shift was as important as the military shift. The strategic error analysis asterisk. The Japanese made strategic errors. 1. Underestimated American carriers, assumed only 2. 2. Divided the fleet, some ships weren't in the main battle. 3. Made the second attack decision, left carriers vulnerable. 4. Didn't prepare for American carriers to be present. Each error independently could have been overcome. Together, they were catastrophic. The American risk-taking. American commanders committed all available carriers. They took the risk of fighting the entire Japanese fleet. A more cautious commander might have held some carriers in reserve. The aggressive positioning and commitment paid off. The logistics reality. After Midway, Japan's logistics situation worsened. America's logistics improved. America could sustain advanced operations. Japan couldn't sustain the defensive. Logistics determined the war's long-term outcome. The personnel losses. Japan lost experienced pilots and sailors. These personnel couldn't be quickly replaced. American personnel losses could be replaced. The personnel loss exchange rate favored America. The technological question. Was American technology better than Japanese? At Midway, not decisively. Japanese aircraft were competitive. American aircraft were competitive. It wasn't a technology victory. It was an intelligence, positioning, and timing victory. The comparability assessment. If the battle had been refought multiple times, some would go to Japan, given the Japanese advantages. Most would go to America, given the intelligence advantage. The outcome was determined, but the path was contingent. The historical significance. Midway is often cited as the turning point of the Pacific War. This is mostly accurate. Before Midway, Japan was advancing. After Midway, America was advancing. The shift was decisive. The lesson. The Battle of Midway teaches. 1. Intelligence matters. Code breaking was crucial. 2. Positioning matters. American positioning was perfect. 3. Leadership matters. American commanders made better decisions. 4. Luck matters. Timing was critical. 5. Sacrifice matters. Torpedo bombers' sacrifice enabled victory. 6. Adaptability matters. American forces adapted quickly. 7. Logistics matters. Production capacity determines outcomes. All these factors combined to determine the outcome. After the Battle of Midway, the Pacific War continued for 3 more years. But from Midway forward, the outcome was clear. The island-hopping campaign asterisk. After Midway, America went on the offensive. The strategy, island-hopping, attacking key islands, bypassing others. Each island brought America closer to Japan. Each battle added to American experience. The Guadalcanal offensive asterisk. The first major offensive, Guadalcanal, August 1942. It was close, hard-fought, costly, but America prevailed. The offensive showed that America could defeat Japan in sustained combat. 24 Essex-class carriers were built. Each was superior to earlier carriers. Japan couldn't match the production. The pilot training asterisk. America rotated experienced pilots home, used them as trainers. New pilots learned from veterans. American pilot quality improved as the war continued. Japan kept pilots flying until they were killed. Japanese pilot quality declined as the war continued. The air superiority evolution asterisk. In 1942, Japanese and American air superiority was competitive. By 1944, American air superiority was overwhelming. American fighters outnumbered Japanese fighters 10-1 in some theaters. Japanese air power was virtually eliminated. The naval superiority asterisk. After Midway, American naval power grew continuously. Japan couldn't replace losses. By 1944, American naval power was overwhelming. Japan couldn't contest the seas. The submarine warfare asterisk. American submarines attacked Japanese shipping. Japanese merchant marine was decimated. Japan's economy was strangled. Supplies to distant garrisons were cut off. The strategic bombing asterisk. By 1944, American long-range bombers attacked Japanese cities. Tokyo was firebombed, thousands killed. Japanese industrial capacity was destroyed. Japan couldn't sustain the war. The two-front pressure asterisk. Japan was fighting China. Japan was fighting America in the Pacific. Japan couldn't handle both. Resources were divided. Neither front could be defended adequately. The home defense asterisk. By 1945, America was planning invasion of Japan. The plan assumed high casualties. But Japan was so weakened, the invasion would have succeeded. Before the invasion, Japan surrendered, August 1945. Training for new pilots was cut short, not enough time. Training for new sailors was cut short, not enough ships. Quality of personnel declined. Replacements were poorly trained. The kamikaze response asterisk. By 1944 to 1945, Japan was using kamikaze tactics, suicide attacks. It was a sign of desperation. The atomic bombs asterisk. Instead of invasion, America dropped atomic bombs. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were destroyed. Japan announced surrender on August 15, 1945. The war in the Pacific was over. The post-war assessment asterisk. The Battle of Midway proved to be the turning point. Everything after Midway went America's way. Nothing after Midway went Japan's way. The battle determined the war's outcome. The personnel replacement asterisk. The most crucial difference after Midway. America could replace personnel losses. Japan couldn't. That as the war continued, this difference became more pronounced. American forces got stronger, Japanese forces got weaker. The industrial reality asterisk. America's industrial capacity was unlimited compared to Japan's. America was growing industrial capacity. Japan's industrial capacity was being destroyed. By war's end, America outproduced Japan 50-1 in many categories. The strategic inevitability asterisk. After Midway, American victory became inevitable. The specific path to victory was uncertain. But the outcome was clear. Japan couldn't match America's production. Japan couldn't match America's pilot training. Japan couldn't match America's logistics. Japan couldn't win. The Midway legacy asterisk. The Battle of Midway is remembered as a turning point, correct. An American intelligence victory, correct. A display of American courage, correct. A display of Japanese tactical excellence, correct. The battle that determined the Pacific War, correct. The legacy is earned. The battle was indeed pivotal. The final assessment asterisk. The Battle of Midway is history's greatest naval battle. Not the largest in terms of ships or personnel, but the most decisive in terms of outcome. One day's fighting determined 3 years of war. The battle showed that intelligence, leadership, and positioning matter more than numbers. It showed that even when facing superior odds, victory is possible with the right advantages. The battle could have gone either way, but it went America's way, and the Pacific War was decided. The Battle of Midway is celebrated as an American victory. But what if the battle had gone differently? What if Japan had won at Midway instead of losing? The counterfactual scenario asterisk. June 4th, 1942. What if American intelligence had failed? What if the code hadn't been broken? What if the American carriers had been positioned wrong? What if the Japanese attack had been more successful? What if the Japanese carriers had been more heavily defended? The alternative victory path asterisk. If Japan had won at Midway, American carriers would have been destroyed. American naval power in the Pacific would have been crippled. Japan would have consolidated control of the Pacific. American counteroffensive would have been delayed. The war would have continued longer. The Japanese consolidation asterisk. With Midway conquered and American carriers destroyed, Japan could have advanced further into the Pacific, could have attacked Hawaii, could have cut American supply lines, could have established an impregnable defensive perimeter. The Japanese Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere would have been consolidated. The American response asterisk. America would have to rebuild the Pacific Fleet. New carriers would have been built. New pilots would have been trained. The rebuilding would take months, maybe years. In the interim, Japan could have fortified its positions. The China factor asterisk. If Japan controlled the Pacific securely, Japan could focus on China, could possibly defeat China, could cut supply lines to China. China's war effort would be crippled. The supply line dominance asterisk. With Pacific control, Japan could supply distant garrisons reliably. Island garrisons wouldn't be starved out. Japanese forces could remain strong. American island hopping campaign would face stronger resistance. The invasion delay asterisk. American invasion of Japan would be delayed. More time for America to build forces. More time for Japan to fortify. The invasion would be even more costly when it happened. Asterisk asterisk the Soviet entry asterisk asterisk. The Soviet Union entered the Pacific War in August 1945. If the war had continued longer, the timing would be different. Soviets might have conquered more territory before Japan surrendered. The post-war division might be different. The extension would change everything. The European impact. If the Pacific War extended, America would commit fewer resources to Europe. Might affect European liberation timing. Might affect Soviet expansion in Europe. The post-war world would be different. The atomic bomb impact. If the war continued longer, more atomic bombs would have been used. More Japanese cities would have been destroyed. More Japanese civilians would have been killed. Japan would have been more devastated. The psychological impact. Japanese victory at Midway would have validated Japanese strategy. Japanese confidence would have been reinforced. Japanese would have believed in victory. The American morale. American loss at Midway would have devastated American morale, but not broken it. Americans would have been determined to rebuild and win. The setback would have been temporary, but it would have delayed the American offensive. The Japanese military decline. Even with a Midway victory, Japan's long-term position was unsustainable. Japan couldn't outproduce America. Japan couldn't match American industrial capacity. The victory would have delayed the inevitable, not prevented it. The war extension costs. If the war extended by 1 year, hundreds of thousands more would die. Japanese cities would be more destroyed. American casualties would be higher. Soviet expansion would be greater. The Midway victory, for America, shortened the war and reduced casualties. The post-war world. If Japan had won at Midway, Japan might have negotiated better surrender terms. Soviet Union might control more Pacific territory. The post-war world might be divided differently. Communism might expand differently. The historical contingency. The Battle of Midway shows how contingent history is. One battle point, one decision. One moment changes the entire trajectory. The narrow victory. The American victory was narrow. It depended on code breaking, positioning, timing, luck, Japanese errors. Remove any factor, and the outcome is different. The reality assessment. In reality, Japan lost. America won. The war's outcome was determined. From Midway forward, it was only a question of time. The Battle of Midway's consequences rippled through the rest of the Pacific War. Every battle after Midway was fought with the knowledge that America was going to win. Japan was fighting to delay defeat, not to achieve victory. The psychological shift consequence asterisk. After Midway, Japanese soldiers knew Japan was losing. The confidence of earlier battles was gone. Morale declined. Desperation increased. Japanese soldiers fought harder because they were desperate, not confident. The strategic shift consequence asterisk. After Midway, America took the offensive. Island hopping campaign began. America advanced methodically toward Japan. Japan was pushed back continuously. The pilot training consequence asterisk. After Midway, American pilot quality improved. Veteran pilots rotated home, trained replacements. The pyramid of experience was built. Japanese pilot training system couldn't match it. The carrier doctrine consequence asterisk. Midway proved carriers were the dominant weapon. Battleships were obsolete. Navies would be built around carriers. America understood this, built accordingly. Try to keep up. Couldn't. The production consequence asterisk. After Midway, American production accelerated. Essex-class carriers were built at increasing rate. New destroyers, new cruisers, new support ships. Japan watched helplessly as American Navy grew. Japan couldn't match the production. The supply line consequence asterisk. After Midway, American supply lines extended deeper into the Pacific. Japanese supply lines were cut. Island garrisons were starved. Japanese forces were immobilized by lack of supplies. The island garrison consequence asterisk. After Midway, American forces attacked Japanese-held islands. The garrisons were isolated, cut off from resupply, starving, sick. The submarine consequence asterisk. After Midway, American submarines operated more freely. They sank Japanese merchant ships. Japanese supply to the military was disrupted. Military couldn't be supplied adequately. The home island defense consequence asterisk. After Midway, Japan had to defend the home islands. Build fortifications. Prepare for invasion. Commit resources to homeland defense. Resources that could have been used elsewhere. The civilian impact consequence asterisk. After Midway, American bombers could attack Japanese cities. Japanese cities were destroyed. Asterisk asterisk. The morale collapse consequence asterisk asterisk. After Midway, Japanese civilian morale declined. The government had promised victory. Instead, defeat was coming. The disconnection between promise and reality was demoralizing. The military government consequence asterisk. Japan's military government faced pressure. Military factions blamed each other for Midway. Political instability increased, but the military government maintained control. The surrender decision consequence asterisk. After Midway, the question became when Japan would surrender, not if. When. Japanese leadership debated. Negotiate surrender. Fight to the death. Seek Soviet mediation. The debates continued until the atomic bombs. The atomic bomb consequence asterisk. The atomic bombs accelerated the surrender decision. August 6th, Hiroshima bombed. August 8th, Soviet Union entered the war. August 9th, Nagasaki bombed. August 15th, Japan announced surrender. The atomic bombs were the final blow. But the war had already been decided at Midway. The occupation consequence asterisk. Japan surrendered unconditionally. American forces occupied Japan. Japan was disarmed. Demilitarized. Japan became a democracy under American supervision. The post-war legacy consequence asterisk. Japan emerged from the war as a defeated nation. But Japan eventually became an ally. Japan rebuilt, became a major economic power. Japan's post-war success was based on American occupation and rebuilding. The veterans consequence asterisk. Midway survivors became legends. Japanese survivors carried trauma and shame. American survivors carried pride and victory. The battle shaped entire generations. The historical memory consequence asterisk. The Battle of Midway is remembered as a turning point. It's studied in military schools. It's celebrated in American culture. It's analyzed by historians. The battle's significance endures. The final truth asterisk. The Battle of Midway determined the Pacific War's outcome. From the moment those first bombs fell on Japanese carriers, the war was decided. America would win, Japan would lose. The only questions were, when would the war end? How many would die before it ended? How would the post-war world be shaped? All of these questions flowed from Midway. 1. Intelligence is a force multiplier. 2. Leadership determines outcomes. 3. Positioning determines battle outcomes. 4. Luck and chance matter. 5. Sacrifice enables victory. 6. Production capacity determines war outcomes. 7. Adaptability beats inflexibility. 8. Morale determines staying power. These lessons remain relevant today.